Hello, good morning, good morning. I thought I would come and tell you a little bit about the elves at the International Elf Service. So as you know, there are loads of elves. There are like so many elves in the North Pole. And according to children, they all look slightly different. So here, as you know, at International Elf Service, we are all about children's imagination. So we don't draw the elves because every child knows exactly what an elf looks like, and they have in their mind what the colour of the shoes, the hat and shape and all the rest of it. So it is up to your children to decide. But, because we write, in effect, stories, books about adventures and all the goings on in the North Pole, our characters are really strong and they have a really definite way of writing and speaking and behaving and drawing as well, just like all the characters that you would find in a book. So this is partly why, for those of you that do have elves, why your letters cannot be signed from your elf, because the elves that are writing the letters are really amazing characters, and I thought I would tell you a little bit about them. So they change slightly from year to year, but the common, the old favourites, they're not old and they're not common. Well, how old are they? But I'll start off by telling you a little bit about Elfie. So Elfie writes the majority of the letters in the Advent calendar bundle, but 8 elves write to your children altogether. So Elfie, the jury is out. Is Elfie a girl or is Elfie a boy? What do your kids think? What do your kids think? So this all started out because my children couldn't decide and they would have arguments about it, and I thought, well, do you know what? They can decide for themselves and it's all fine, it's all fine. So Elfie, we don't know whether Elfie's a girl or a boy, and Elfie's a very sweet, lovable letter writing elf who's very, very chatty and loves writing to all your children and gets overexcited by every little thing and is usually at the brunt of Marty's pranks and tricks. So I'll come on to Marty next. And Elfie is just desperate, borrows Father Christmas's computer and taps away, all the news, all the news, all the news. So if Elfie knows anything, your children are going to hear all about it. So then Marty is a little bit like Dennis the Menace. Oh, hold on, I haven't shown. This is one of the letters that Elfie's done. This is the one for Christmas Eve. So it's in the Advent Calendar letter bundle. It is not in the mini news bundle, but you can get it separately if you want to. So Marty is a little bit like Dennis the Menace, and he is full of inventions and pranks. He's a complete trickster, very, very lazy, and has a very, very sweet tooth. And he's always up to something. So he's got thick orange tufty hair, and he often has a candy cane tucked behind his ear in case of emergencies. And he has a midnight feast cupboard up, so he sleeps on the top of a triple bunk in Cinnamon Mine, and his midnight feast cupboard is usually bursting, and his bed is full of empty wrappers, and he's always up to something and will do anything to avoid work. So the question this year is, so his invention is a Supersonic Snowball Blaster. Will it work? So I can read, shall I read a bit out to you? I will, it's so exciting. So it says, dear, and then to your children, so you get all your children, it says, hello, I'm not just the cleverest elf in the North Pole, but I also have the most brilliant ideas. Yet again, I've had the best plan ever. I've invented a supersonic snowball blaster that will fire a zillion snowballs directly at the other elves' bottoms. And it's so acicles, they'll all want to turn. And the cleverest part is that any elf wanting to have a very short go with my fantastic invention, and only when I say so, must put a chocolate coin in here and twist that lever there, and the payment will then whiz straight down that tube and into my mouth. Ha ha! Chocolate heaven! I reckon I'll get 100 chocolate coins every minute. Bottoms and bazookas, what a magnificent idea, though I say so myself. I pour North Pole water down this funnel here, which mixes with leftover magic dust there, and that turns this huge cog and then freezes in there, and kapow! Snowballs come blasting out of this pipe like this. And he's written little notes next to his invention diagram, and then he says, it appears my rather excellent invention has the teeniest, tiniest, weeniest glitch. That happens quite commonly. It's sucking up my candies and melting all the snow. Yikes, pickles and puddings. This is a humongous disaster. I must sort this out immediately. Gotta go, bye! Marty. So that's him all over. So one of the other elves is called Lyra. Now Lyra is a female elf and is an absolute whiz at computers and coding and maths, and she's super cool. So she wears large purple specs, and each year she hasn't been around all the years because the elves change slightly from time to time. So this year there was a slight series of delivery mishaps, and things were landing in the North Pole where they shouldn't. So they should go by the delivery shed, where they're all organised by the delivery elves and then taken over to mistletoe stores or delivered to the cinema mine, wherever it is. So she has installed a mega whizzy X-ray machine so that the elves can see inside each package without unwrapping them. Very exciting. And so far they've used it to look inside a cherry pie, Nosy the rabbit, an extra heavy parcel weighing scales, and a tangerine. But then she talks about, so she codes all sorts of things up, and there's been several incidences. So, oh dear, yes, a bottle of bubblegum flavouring dropped straight into the reindeer trough and gave Rudolph a terrible fright. Poor Rudolph, he gets a really bad time each year, doesn't he? Then we have Brian. So poor Brainy Brian, this is him. He gets in a muddle with his words, and often with very humorous results. And he's actually the trainee chef for Mother and Father Christmas. Mother and Father Christmas both cook. So Father Christmas, his best thing is peppermint bark. If you have not ever made peppermint bark, you must. It's delicious and it's so easy, and no cooking is involved. Melted chocolate, and then you can smash up some candy canes or some other sweets, whatever you want. And so you melt your chocolate, you pour it on some parchment paper on a baking tray until it's really, really thin, and then you sprinkle on all your goodies and pat them down. Everyone gets covered in chocolate, absolutely delicious, into the fridge. And then when it's all set, you can just snap it into bits, and it will need to live in the fridge because it does melt very, very quickly. But in our house it doesn't last for very long, and I'm only allowed to make one giant batch because we all eat it all the time and it's really bad. So that's what we do. So I buy a massive bar of chocolate. Can you tell where Marty gets his sweet tooth from? It might be me. Anyway, this year, Brainy Brian. So look, this is his signature, because I think he's slightly just muddly, but all the other elves absolutely love him. And he makes some Christmas style cookies, and desperate not to mess it up, he sort of mutters away and gets himself into a bit of a pickle. So for example, he uses strawberry or bum pudding flavour, and then he crosses out the bum because he actually means plum, remembers just in time. So your children will have to bear with him. He does his best, but he does pop up from time to time. Very comical. Lily is the most organised. I don't know how old she is. She's more elderly than not, but she has important lists and she keeps them all organised. And in fact, I think she's the only reason the elves get everything ready in time for Christmas Eve, because she pulls them all into line, and every time there's an incident, she calls an emergency pyjama meeting where all the elves come to Cranberry Cabin, which is where all their triple bunk beds are, and they all discuss the issue in hand and solve it, and then it's all fixed, or they work towards fixing it depending on what's happened. So this is her signature drawing. Her garland changes slightly each year, but she always does that, and then signs off with a holly leaf. Oh, it's all backwards, sorry. So yes, this year she has pinned 3 very important reminders onto the notice board to keep everyone on track. One is about the Magic Dust Stir Up event, telling everyone that they must attend and they must bring a freshly harvested cinnamon stick for stirring to ensure that it is strong enough to help the reindeer fly this year. It's got to be done in a very specific way. And there's some other things. I won't tell you. Next elf is, well, she calls herself JD because she's rather embarrassed about her real name, and she insists that JD stands for job done because she is the Christmas elf that comes to the rescue whenever the other elves get themselves into a pickle, which is quite common, happens a lot. And she rarely has 5 minutes to herself because as soon as she sits down, she's called again to untangle some elves or sort out some reindeer poo pongs, or maybe some elves got too close to the sparkle puffer. Anyway, she's very busy, but her real name is Josephina Delicate. And Marty will rip her about that, but she insists her name is JD, and she's very, very organised. That's her letter for this year. So that's rather fun. So she's new this year actually. So if you haven't had the Advent Calendar letter bundle before, I mean, if you have had it before, then your children will meet JD for the first time. And she's very nice and she's very practical. Then we have Stan in the Cinnamon Mine. Now Stan is very good at drawing. He's one of the sort of elderly miners, so he's extremely experienced. In case you didn't know, I wonder if I've got a map. The Cinnamon Mine is underneath Christmas Cabin. So if you look at the map, and it's down here, if you can see, there's lots of beautiful lanterns in, and so there's a trap door in the kitchen in where Mother and Father Christmas live in Christmas Cabin. And you lift up the trap door and there's a rope ladder and you can descend into the mine. So quite often the elves above ground, when they're going to the cinnamon mine, it's usually because of something extremely exciting or extremely important or something major has happened. So they lift up the trap door and go flying down the rope ladder, and usually all go down in a heap with arms and legs sticking out everywhere. Very occasionally, one of the new delivery elves accidentally puts the delivery of cloudberry jam on top of the trapdoor, and then the cinnamon mine elves, they cannot get out. So what they do is they send a note through the magical wind machine. So the magical wind machine is all full of cogs and pipes and buttons and whistles, and it's an amazing piece of kit, and it lives where it lives. But each department in the North Pole has its own branch of the magical wind machine. So not only do your children's letters arrive with Father Christmas through the magical wind machine, it blows all the letters into the mailroom at the back of the elves' workshop, and then the mailing elves will gather them all up and put them in sacks and take them over to Christmas Cabin for Father Christmas to read, and they stack them up next to his bed with his spectacles on the top. So yes, if you're trapped in the cinnamon mine, you would then send a note out to all of the other departments saying, could somebody please remove what must be another delivery of cloudberry jam from the top of the trapdoor? We need to get out and we can't. So all the elves, this is how they communicate with each other as well. And occasionally parcels will ping out, but you're not allowed to put elves in. So you're not allowed to carry which actually, in the letter number 1, for the 1st of December, there may be a blockage of some sort in the magical wind machine. Not that I would know so early in advance, of course. So back to Stan. So this is Stan, and he loves his lantern so much. So everything, all the mining elves, completely covered in cinnamon. And so the elves, when they're going to do them baking, obviously they have to order some special cinnamon dust so that they can make all their cinnamon buns and all the rest. And also the fresh sticks of cinnamon bark for the magic dust, to make sure that the magic dust is strong. also harvested in the cinnamon mine, so it's extremely busy down there. But there's lots of passageways and caves, and last year, in fact, they discovered a secret library down there, one of the caves right down at the back. And the books weren't ordinary books. So if you had it last year, you'll remember that, for example, you might open a book called How to Look After Reindeer, and hay and jingle bells and reindeer poo droppings would fall out of it. Or a book about jokes will make you laugh immediately. So yes, so Stan's letter, I don't know if you can see, but they're making something this year. They've been tasked with something on page 274,863 of Father Christmas's Book of Christmas Magic. And I can't decide whether to tell you. I think I won't. Because I don't want to give the game away completely, just in case you're one of the families that likes to read all the letters together for the first time. Incidentally, if you get these letters, please, even if you don't want to read them, open them and check that the names are correct and that you're not missing any. The letters will be dated so that you can tell whether you have all your pages. So can you see on there, it says, because you can all do mirror writing, can't you? It says 24th of December 2021. We've put the year on this year because so many of you have said, look, we've been with you for 8 years now, or 7 years, and we can't tell which one came from which year. So we've got this year's date on fully, so you can tell and keep them all together. Oh yes, by the way, so you could deliver the box that your letters come in with, either letter number 1 or the last letter, and then your children could put their letters in it and then keep it through a year, and then they can reread them whenever they want. So I'll tell you one thing about Stan's thing that they were making. They needed an emergency thing of cinnamon aid to put some flames out, and there were lots of explosions and different coloured lights and puffs of smoke shooting out of the trapdoor into Christmas cabin, and we hadn't realised until Father Christmas popped his head down to tell us that his slippers had caught fire and the flashing lights were making him dizzy. So oh yes, you can choose whether you have a Father Christmas version or a Santa Claus version. And the Advent Calendar bundle will include a letter from Father Christmas or Santa Claus, depending on which version you choose. So it's who the elves refer to when they're writing their riveting letters to your children. So, and then the 8th elf this year is Dave the Stitch. So Dave the Stitch has been around since the beginning of time. He works in Pine Needle Lodge and has the very important job of designing and making Father Christmas's Christmas Eve uniform, which is, it's new each year. Well, it's sort of upgraded, if you like, and has extra additions depending on how the big delivery went last year. Usually there's some incident of sort that triggers the need for a brand new gadget. Because obviously we need the big delivery to go as smoothly as possible. So we get some exciting extras. Shall I read some? I love this. I'm such a child. I'm such a big child. So it says, so last year's in-flight notebook, it says he had to use one of the emergency chimney escape jetpacks to unstick himself. So that was one of last year's editions. And it said this was just after he'd eaten a whole cherry pie, 498 mince pies and 1006 cookies, which, as I'm sure you can appreciate, all our children are leaving snacks for him. And well, what can he do except get bigger and bigger as the evening goes on? Oh, I love a mince pie. I do love a mince pie. That's why I had to take up running, because I liked mince pies too much. I thought if I go running, then I can have more. So this year, I'll just read a couple out. There's an updated GPS, which is a gigantic parcel sorter for all those awkward to wrap enormous presents. There's an invisibility disappearing evaporator, so he can quickly avoid being seen, because we all know if he's seen, he can't be delivering prezzies. There's a diving suit with submarine jetpacks for underwater deliveries, and there's a picture of him with his diving suit on, with his festive hat, holding a Prezi. There's a Prezi duplicator. Now this is an interesting one. It's to replace any that fall overboard. So earlier on in the story, in the Advent calendar story, some things are discovered under the snow that may have been there for like quite a long time. So although they calculate exactly what's going on onto the sleigh and to the toy sack for all the children, you have to prepare for when things don't go according to plan. So David Stitch is very keen on this. And there's also a hypersonic speedometer with a speed of sound breakingly fast setting. So for all children really keen on rockets and fast cars and things like that. Well, they can... How fast is the speed of sound? Well, he'd be going faster than that. There's also a sparkly rope ladder for Father Christmas to use to climb in and out of the sleigh. And I haven't read them all out. There's lots on here. Da, da, da. So that's it. It's all very, very exciting. So we've had other elves in Bubbles worked in Soapsud Cabin, and we haven't heard from Bubbles for a couple of years. But she is another one. We're not sure if it's a he or a she, but is very organised and sorts out all the laundry for all the elves. And we have had Danny, who fixes things. Danny has been absolutely amazing. And also new this year, there are some new additions to the map. There you are. So, all about the elves. If you have any questions, I've been so busy talking. And hello to everyone that's joined. Very nice to see you. If you have any questions at all, you can DM us or send an email to emily@internationalelfservice.com and we'll come back to you. But you can also have a really good rummage on the website and read more about the elves, and for each of the Christmas letters and the Christmas letter bundles there's a synopsis, because the stories change each year, and it will just tell you a bit like if you read on the back of the book, it'll just give you the gist of the story. So very nice to talk to you, and I'll say goodbye for now. Have a lovely day.